We want to check our piston to valve clearance, so we're mixing up some clay. The exhaust relief on this motor, or the valve relief in the pistons, is on the exhaust valve on this motor. Isn't that weird? But normally it'd be on the intake valve. So we're going to push that there. Now I want to make sure that the pistons or the valves aren't going to stick to the clay. So I'm going to put some oil all over the valves and the combustion chamber on this cylinder, just to make sure nothing sticks. And then I'm going to spray a little bit of WD-40 on top of the clay, just to make sure nothing wants to stick to the clay. And then the head goes on. We don't really care about this head gasket. We bought this head gasket just to destroy it. This is a standard 6.2 liter head gasket that crushes down to 51.051. The head gaskets we're going to use are going to be LS9 head gaskets that crush down to 0.55. So whatever, as long as we're good here, we'll be even better with the other motor, or with the other gaskets. Alright, torque these bolts just to 20. Okay. 20. 20. 20. For this motor, we have a set of Brian Tooley Racing 7.375 push rods. These are oversized diameter. Instead of 5/16, they're 11/32, so they can be a little bit stiffer. This is supposed to be a high revving engine, so we got a little bit thicker push rods. Okay, now we're tight. Now we're just going to roll the motor around a couple of 3 different times. Before I come apart, there's one thing I want to check. I know I don't have any clay on these or anything, but now is actually a really good time to check our lifter preload. We have a push rod checker that we haven't got to use yet, but I took a best guess at the 7.375, and I haven't really had a chance to install them and measure and see how they do. So now we'll get to it. Perfect. One and a quarter turn. One, just an eighth. So with the heads milled 30 thousandths, the right push rod length is definitely going to be 7.375. Now I want to get it all back apart. Make sure we got proper clearance in the clay. And then we can put our final 2 valve springs in. And the heads can go on for final assembly with the LS9 head gaskets. And everything should be just fine. Take the push rods out. And ooh. It looks like the clay didn't even touch on the intake valve, but I can see a mark on the piston. And I felt it too. Well, we can't go shorter on the push rod length. Take over razor blade. So on the exhaust valve, we have plenty of clearance, but I don't know what to make of this mark right here on the top of the piston. All I can do is mix up some more clay and start over. I'm pretty sure I know what that is. We'll do this on 2 separate cylinders. We'll do it on 1 and 3. 3 having the valves, or 3 having the strong valve springs, and 1 not. We're not worried about the exhaust valves. We are only worried about the intake valves. Okay. I think this time we're going to use the 055 LS9 head gasket. This is a critical thing at this point. Oh, shit. And we'll put the head gasket on. I think this time I'm going to put down 6 bolts to cover for these as well. So 600 lift on the exhaust might not be too bad, but I think 600 lift on the intake, it might be a bit much. Man, that really sucks. I called Texas Speed and I spoke to them and they didn't tell me no. I spoke to their tech support and they didn't tell me no. They said you want to be careful about checking it, but they wouldn't go any higher, but they didn't tell me no. So I felt it when I was rolling it. I know it tagged something because it rolled past the exhaust and then I felt it bind a little bit. Damn. Can't go to 7.35 push rods. We won't have enough preload. We'll have a noisy ass valve train. That's not an answer. And the worst part is we're not supposed to just barely clear, right? We're supposed to have, I think, like 80 on the intake valve and 100 on the exhaust for thermal expansion. I got my 100 on the exhaust. That's no problem. But I don't know if I'm going to get 80 on the intake. Damn. Came loose. But we can clearly see where the marks are on the front side. They are on the back side. It cut all the way through the putty. It touched the piston. That's no good. On the cylinder with the valve springs, we'll cut this. We have 0.06 which is not the .80 that we need, and that's about the preload on the lifters. All right, well, sucks as though it may, we have our answer. The Bald Eagle's cam is a little bit too much for L9H or L92. So we have our answer. Sucks as though it may. We have 60 thousandths of gap between the intake valve and the piston with the factory springs applied, which is right about our preload. And without the preload on the checker springs, even though it moved on every spot where the valve caught it, it went all the way through to the other side. We have zero clearance. Which means if things expand or if the lifter pumps all the way up at a high RPM, maybe we're just gonna barely kiss the piston. I gotta step back from the edge on the intake valve. 600 lift is fine on the exhaust, but we gotta get rid of the 600 lift on the intake, or we gotta shrink the duration on the intake. We gotta figure something out. But the Cletus McFarland Bald Eagles camshaft is maybe not a good choice on the L92 or L9H motor with the stock pistons and the heads milled 30 thousandths. I'm glad I ran this test with 7.375 push rods and not 7.4. We'll come back at it when we get our new camshaft. Can you guys see the mark? It's right here. It's very light, it's not deep, it hasn't been tagging, it's just this one little mark right there. That's where the piston touches. Again, I called tech support from Texas Speed and I spoke to them on the phone, and they said they wouldn't go any bigger than 600 lift, but they didn't tell me I shouldn't use it. And this is why we always need to check, especially if we know it's going to be close.